What's up, everybody? Welcome back to, I almost said Bingetown TV. Welcome back to Binge Empire, Bingetown TV's newest and latest and greatest fantasy and sci-fi podcast. We are obviously here to cover season 3, episode 2 of Amazon Prime's The Wheel of Time. I still have no idea what the episode is called.
It's called A Question of Crimson.
Luke has an idea. A Question of Crimson, and I like that. So we are, I believe, really just going to get into this thing. I guess some quick Bingetown housekeeping before we do so, just to give people a little bit of context if you're not familiar with our coverage and you're kind of joining us for the first time here in season 3. My name's Kyle. I'm kind of, let's say, the host, just guiding us through the scenes. I am a multiple-time book reader. It has been a little bit since I read the books, but I'm kind of here to maybe be the expert in the heaviest quotation marks you could ever write. I'm joined by Luke, aka Lanfear's son, and then I'm also by Dave, who used to be Land's son, but maybe he's on the outs with his daddy. Luke is a book reader along with me, and then Dave is our show only at the moment. So we will be joined by Paul, our other show only, eventually, but that's kind of the gist of the podcast here. Dave and Paul become our guinea pigs. They have no idea what's happening, and me and Luke get to giggle at the theories they make and then provide some context for them. And the way we cover each individual episode is just buckets. So this episode, we kind of, everyone's split apart. So we have 3 settings. So we'll cover everything that happens with Perrin and the Two Rivers storyline. Then we'll move to everything that happens at the White Tower. And then we'll end everything with Rand's squad in the Aiel Waste. So without further ado, let's jump to the Two Rivers. I have this kind of in 2 little buckets here. The first one is kind of being their traveling one. So we have Perrin, Loyal, Bane, and Chiad take the ways to the Mountains of Mist, back to the Two Rivers. They get kind of some scenic mountain walks. They have an interesting conversation here as well.
Yeah, so the main thing that I took away here, at least in this quick opening scene with Perrin, Loyal, Bane, and Chiad, is that the Ogier information, the lore kind of build onto the builders themselves. I thought that was really cool. So we find out that Loyal is getting a little sick. He's not feeling so great, and it's because that he is not at his home. So the longer I took it, the Ogier are away from their home, the sicker they get, and they can potentially die from this if they are away for too long. And Luke kind of broke it down for me with it isn't just like one home. There's like multiple different places that you can come from Ogier that are kind of scattered throughout the realm, let's say.
They're called steadings.
Okay.
Yeah,
but
it's
I
like
just
an
like
oasis
that.
in the desert, essentially. It's like a magical oasis.
I really like it because, I mean, Loyal's been a day one homie of ours. You know, your name sings in my ear has always been a favorite quote of mine. So anytime we get more information on the builders, we knew at the moment was that they were the creators of the ways, but nothing really else. So this was a cool little lore dump for the Ogier.
Yeah, I like that they just did not waste time. They just had him go through the ways. We didn't even see a scene of it, but Loyal confirms that basically you cannot go through that without an Ogier, or you're probably a dark friend. And that's important because Perrin smells a dark friend having have used the pathway recently. So put a pin in that for a little bit. But one thing he said here, and I'm curious at your take on it, Dave, but Loyal specifically says that using the ways, he says it's much better way to travel than all that channeling. Have we seen channeling to travel at this point? I don't even know what he means by that, unless I'm misremembering a scene from season 1 or 2. That feels like almost new information that he's confirming, if we haven't seen it, unless I'm forgetting a scene.
Yeah, we're aware of it as viewers. I think in a way we've seen people, I believe Mogideon for sure at the end of season 2 uses it. We talked about it. I just remember on the season 2 podcast, we had a conversation about it, especially the way that Lanfear was kind of moving around and the quickness in which people were getting to Falm. But it is interesting now that you're saying this. Yeah, that Loyal, how did he get that information? And not entirely sure. Maybe Lanfear, there's some off-screen type of conversations with via Moraine and then via other things. I'm not entirely sure.
It will be readdressed, though. Like, I definitely for sure think that that's going to come back into play soon. But the other thing is, you can just assume Alana did the same thing, right? Because she's here, skipping ahead a tiny bit.
Yeah, or I mean, he could also have maybe the perspective of because they've changed the way the ways work. So season 1, there was the pure, we've only seen them channel to open them. Moraine channels to open it. They channeled to get out of it. And actually, now that we're talking about this, I think he's making more of the commentary. So this one, he has like the little stone leaf. That's like the key. That is how it works in the books too. They had like there's a stone leaf that you put in the right spot, and then the doors open. Maybe that's what he actually meant. Like
I don't
using
know,
the
because
leaf
the way
is
he
a much
says it,
better.
the
I
ways is
agree,
a
though.
much better way to travel than all that channeling. So I don't know. Either way,
Yeah,
we can
I don't know.
drop that, but I just wanted to point it out because it caught my ear.
Yeah, the Waygates looked awesome.
Yes.
They've changed the CGI on them. They're much more, I was gonna say environmental for like the lack of a way better term to use there, but they're just more, they look more natural, like in the scenery versus like just being kind of stone at doors. And I personally really enjoyed that.
Yeah. And before we get to the actual town, just there is always entertainment to be had when Aiel are commenting on anything. So they have some nice comments about the wetlands here. And then we also get a remembrance of Manetheren, which was a city from thousands of years ago that stood in the spot of the two rivers. And that's all just kind of briefly talked about here. Nothing to break down or anything, but that gets said before we actually get to the town.
Do you remember them singing that song, Dave, in season 1 as they're traveling?
So the name didn't ring any bells when they mentioned it in the show, but Luke did say, "Do you remember the song that they sing?" And I very much do remember all 5 of them, or at least 4 of them at the time it was, when they're all on horseback with Moraine and they start singing the song. I do remember that scene very vividly.
Yeah. And I
Pairing
think
with
they're
the bass.
setting it up. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course, the boss. They're setting it up very well, where we had the longing conversation right before it too, where Loyal says the remembrance in our bones of our home, of our ancestors, of the things we shouldn't forget. And they're talking about Manetheren, which is a roundabout way of also addressing Perrin's ancestry. And as we talk more about the two rivers, I think that is a theme that we should be thinking about for sure. Okay. So now, after we do our little scenic, maybe hobbit journey, let's say, through the mountains, we get the great music in the background, but now we're back in the two rivers. We haven't been here since season 1, episode 1. I'm nearly 99% sure. We're greeted by Egwene's mom. We're hustled into the attic of the Wine Spring Inn, which was destroyed in season 1, episode 1 by Moraine's channeling. And we're getting the lowdown on the situation, and the situation is not great right now in the two rivers.
Yeah, it's only fitting that Perrin is being sought after murdering a notorious white cloak in the ranks, it seems like. So, of course, they would want to search his home first, just in case if Perrin ever wanted to stop by. And there is a bounty on his head, correct? So it's not, so there's more of an incentive for the locals to give him up rather than just provide assistance to him. So it is a little bit of a tight pickle for him.
Yeah, we didn't get any white cloaks in episode 1, so I'm happy that they're, I mean, I guess if you don't count the Mogideon scene, which who knows, but I'm happy that it's brought back because they're such an important faction and they're very loose, they're very tightly connected to Perrin. So I'm happy we're just jumping kind of into the deep end. He, even being the angel that he is, says at the end, like, I'm gonna just give myself up, because that is so Perrin. He cares about his family, who actually is ushered out safely, which is good, so he doesn't have to worry about that, but he cares so much about the people that he grew up with that he'll give himself up just to protect the rest of the townsfolk. And at the same time, Alana kind of confirms that there's just bands of Trollocs all over in the forest still. Which is why she's like cut up and has the scratch, which isn't, I don't know, we can leave that for now, but that is the type of injury that almost killed Rand's father earlier. So that, but who knows, like, if it was actually one of the weapons that mattered, or it could just been like a scratch, whatever, but that could come back into play. Who knows? I like that Alana's already there, and just the way she just says, what are the chances running into Bara just in the two rivers? It's just good that the wheel weaves, man. And she drops the line in a cool way here too. But I liked it all, but it does really feel like a prep for next episode.
Yeah, we're just kind of getting a laydown of this kind of simmering cauldron almost that is the two rivers right now. The White Cloaks, the Trollocs. Now we have Perrin, we have some Aielmen, we have Maidens of the Spear, we have an Aes Sedai and her ward. It's like almost every faction that you could think of is actually descending upon the two rivers almost once again. So obviously things are going to pop off at some point. I will say, not to put too much pressure on the storyline itself, because obviously it's going to be different from the books, but this was one of, if not my favorite storyline from the entire series. So I'm very much looking forward to what happens here. And my
And
last
the
comment.
beauty,
Go
let me
ahead.
just say, the beauty of Wheel of Time is I did not agree with that take where not that I didn't love Perrin, I just cared more about Rand stuff and deeper into the story Matt stuff. But around this piece, I was latching onto everything about the Aiel and Rand. So like that's what's amazing about Wheel of Time. Everybody finds their own things and they latch onto their own different characters. So I do know for a fact that Elayne and Perrin are Kyle property though.
I was so deep in the Perrin bag at this point, being
Yeah.
like end of book 3, start of book 4, into through book 4. It was just like it literally, this storyline, this stuff with Perrin is what solidified, like it just carried him to the end of the series for me, being probably my favorite character, at least through my first read through. So this means something to me essentially. So we'll see what they give us. My last comment here will just be, they mentioned that Egwene's dad, Rand's dad, and Matt's dad all helped get Perrin's family out of the town. So they're not currently with us at the moment, it seems. They weren't in the scene, they weren't in this episode. So just something, I guess, to keep an eye out for. Second comment, because I literally always add on a last comment to my final comment, is Bane says in this episode, if you ask the lion to protect you from the bear, you've only chosen to end up in one belly instead of the other. And that is a direct quote from her in the books in this exact situation. But B, I loved how they almost did like a meta commentary where Maskim and Alana like look at each other and like are impressed by it. To me, I read that as like them acknowledging that was a line from the books, like the show telling us like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So I just enjoyed that myself.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to move now to our second bucket, our second location that we're going to cover here, which is going to be the White Tower, Tar Valon. Before we get into that actual setting, naturally, we have to backtrack 20 years to the Kingdom of Andor, the cold open of this episode, and the newly minted Queen Morgase of House Dracan sits upon the lion throne. And I have here just delivers a first act that would make Machiavelli blush. I mean, this was very unexpected and just a great way to open the second episode.
Yeah, this was a great character introduction. I feel like the new characters that we're seeing in this season, at least what they're playing up to be the really big players, have just had such wonderful introductions. Obviously, Mo Gideon in the last season, and then that side scene in the last episode. But amazing introduction to Morgase as a character, because she is so different than the Elayne that we've seen, just personality-wise, obviously, in terms of how ruthless she is. My first immediate reaction to when she kills the other kings and queens is, I literally said it to Luke. I was like, this chick watches a lot of TV. You know, she's learned from Game of Thrones. She's learned from Last Kingdom. She's seen how the Battle of the Air just usually goes not so great. And she made a great decision. I mean, of course, morally, we can discuss whether it was a good decision, but in terms of her reign and what she wants to accomplish, that was a very effective way to get things done. And it was also cool to see how she made them pledge first, so there would be essentially no retaliation from the houses, is how I kind of took it. Just powerful figure, man. And it did make me question Elayne's morals for a little bit. Like, is Elayne hiding something, like a darker side of her that we don't know? Maybe not necessarily dark, but you know, is there some moral ambiguity that she's learned from her mother, that she would make some sacrifices that would make that others would maybe not do, you know? So questioning Elayne, but I'm still trusting our girl. She is definitely a sweetheart, so I don't believe that she's going to be like her mother, but it definitely made me question Elayne as a person.
Do you question her more because she was in Morgase's tummy at the time? Do you think that being that physically present for the event seeped into her?
No, but I will say the conversation with her and Rand last episode now kind of is a little bit louder in my head, you know, just she's telling him to make sacrifices. It's and the quote that we brought up that we both liked was, you know, if you're going to do some good, you have to make some sacrifices no matter what, essentially. So it's interesting.
This episode introduces so many important characters. So if you're not book readers and you're just a show watcher only, form an opinion, care about some of these characters, learn their names, because we get a lot. And I was so happy about this, especially with how powerful and such a powerhouse they made Morgase come across. Not like pairing this scene with everything she does, going toe to toe with Siuan later. It was awesome. And she looks like Elayne a little bit, like she has the same type of look. But the other character that we meet here who's behind her is the Red Sister, that is her advisor. And this is Elayne, another name just to remember. But for now, those are the only two characters we'll talk about. But epic opening. This season is 2 for 2 and just crazy 0 to 100 beginnings, and I love it. And a little spoiler ahead, I'm hearing that we get a crazy opening to episode 3 too, so it should stay in theme.
They did a great job, I think, getting the atmosphere of the Kingdom of Andor. Not sure if you noticed it, Dave, but it's the lion throne. There's 2 female lions next to it. It's because there's always a queen in Andor. There's never a king in Andor. And I believe they mention it, or maybe not here, but I loved the authenticity too of like the houses. Like those are the houses from the books. Like those are their flags, like all of that stuff. It just, the atmosphere of the throne room, I thought felt very, very cool.
It was awesome, yeah.
Okay. I mean, she's like maybe a little bit more aggressive than she is in the books, but it just comes off perfect. I just thought it was like my mouth was almost on the ground. I was like, holy shit, they're going for it. And I am 100% here for it. All right. So we're going to move now into actually present day events that happened at the White Tower. I will just preface this with probably 2 things. One is kind of, there's a lot of conversations that happen in these scenes. So it might be a little out of order, or we're going to group things together that maybe didn't happen in chronological order, but just to ease our conversation around things. This first thing we're going to talk about is going to be Morgase actually entering Tar Valon. She enters the Hall of Sitters, so she's in front of Siuan. She's announced by Lyanna, who is the keeper of the Chronicle. And then the second scene we're going to attach onto that is just Elayne reuniting with her brothers and with Gabriel in kind of her room or whatever that suite was. So a lot of politicking going on just immediately in this episode.
I mean, there was already right off the rip, you could feel some tension because it was so, especially on a rewatch, it's so funny how Siuan makes the queen Morgase wait at the gate a little bit, knowing that they have a little bit of tension already from whatever past that they've shared. I thought that was hilarious. And correct me if I'm wrong. So we have Gawyn is the second brother.
So I guess just to lay it all out here. So we have Lord Galad is the first one that goes in. He's the eldest, but we'll get more information about him. We have Lord Gawyn they announce him as the first Prince of the Sword. And then we have Lord Gabriel is the Prince Consort. So this is essentially Morgase's husband, boyfriend, that's her lover, let's say. They announce Elayne Sedai, as Luke mentioned, Red Ajah, advisor of the queen, and then they announce Morgase herself. So we have 2 sons / obviously Elayne's brothers. We have her lover / boyfriend / husband, and then we have a Red Ajah advisor.
And give us a quick 1 sentence on each of those characters, your initial opinion, Dave.
Galad, what is it?
First
Galad, arrogant. Gawyn.
Yeah.
Chill.
He has the longer hair. And Galad is the one with the beard.
Galad, arrogant. Gawyn, chill. Gabriel, supportive. And Elayne, scary.
Arcane.
That's good.
Oh, yeah. Shout out Arcane. Immediately, such a distinguishable voice. I mean, so unique. I could hear it right away. It's the mother of the one chick. I'm blanking right now. But the only note I really had here was the way they stumbled on Gabriel's name, just made me pause for a second, because you'd think that Morgase's suitor would be a little bit more well-known, and they paused. How I took it almost was that they paused because he wasn't so well-known, and if he's not so well-known, then it's like, okay, where'd he come from? Could this guy be a dark friend? Could he be a Forsaken that just appeared and is playing his cards right? So I was a little,
but let me jump in real quick, because there was a comment I caught on my second watch where that stumble was from Lyanna, right?
Yes.
But Siuan then immediately says after, "It's good to see you again," does she not?
Yeah, she
To
Yeah.
does.
Gabriel? That was confusing because I was with you, Dave, like when we were watching for the first time, how Leanna, they went out of their way to show that, but I didn't catch the Siuan recognizing him. So that feels weird that Leanna wouldn't know it, but Siuan would, but I digress.
Yeah, a
I
Paul
mean,
theory
David,
of mine, I guess, then would be to put on the board is I think Gabriel is either a dark friend or a Forsaken.
Okay.
I will enter it onto the board if you're joining us for the
That would
first
be on the
time.
more of ridiculous side of things for sure for me. I wouldn't, that one doesn't feel as much, you know, I don't have as much pride in that one as I do the others.
If you're watching, I'm making that face only because I haven't been labeling them by any confidence level,
Yeah,
so they're
yeah.
all they're all in the same group. And you
Now
can
we
think
go-
that yourself and try to remember that, but they're not getting labeled that way.
Let's just say if I come up with another theory, just put it ahead of that one, and we'll just maybe shove that one to the bottom a little bit.
They're also just organized by season. But if you're just joining us for the first time, as I mentioned at the top two, Dave is show only. Paul, who's not with us, again, show only. And we've been keeping track of as many of their predictions as we possibly can. They've been nailing some things. They have missed some things, obviously. Some of them are so left field. They're hilarious. Some of them are shockingly prescient. It's just like very good. It's been very fun over the seasons. I was gonna say something else, but I just don't remember. So
So let me jump in
I
then.
yeah, go ahead.
If you okay, yeah. So good introduction scene. If this episode made me take away one thing, it's just that I really like Swan's character, and I'm isolating this thought because in the books I have such mixed feelings about her. Sometimes I love her, sometimes I don't, but I really think I'm preferring the show version of her, and she's starting to be highlighted in the most politically savvy way. Like the way she controls this room and then the immediate conversation we get behind closed doors with Morgase after this, I think it characterizes her so well. And of course, she throws in her fish reference. That's just like that's a thing for the book readers that she's just constantly referencing fish in any way she can. It's just how she uses metaphors and everything. But she just stayed calm this whole time while Morgase was clearly heated, wondering what the hell happened to Elayne all throughout season 2. That's her heir. So I really just like how she's handled, and it just extends right to when Morgase is walking her over to meet with Elayne. We can back up in a second, but just I like when they drop that. I don't want to say politically correctness. That's not really right. They drop the public persona that they have, and they start calling each other by first names, and it's awesome. They both respect each other, and now I have this opinion of Siuan. Like Siuan respecting Morgase puts even more respect on her. Like because I care about Siuan's opinion, and it's just a really well done scene. I think that it did well to like add some personality and everything for Siuan.
I think that's an interesting point too about the book Swan versus show Swan. Part of me wants to say I don't remember how many POV chapters she gets in these early books, but we're always getting someone else's view of her, and I think it's nice to see her in more of, let's say, a neutral situation. You know, we're not getting her from someone else's point of view. We're just seeing her in her element doing her thing. Yeah. And I think she's pretty successful at it myself. My last comment on this is kind of almost lobbing a question to Dave. Were you shocked at all? You don't really have a ton of time to get used to Morgase at this point, but she has a serpent ring. You know, she calls Siuan mother, Siuan calls her daughter. Was that shocking at all to you? We obviously learn later that it's more honorary, but obviously you see the ring always means something.
No, I think I audibly, when we were watching, said a wow. I did not expect Elayne's mother to be former Aes Sedai. So that was definitely a cool reveal. And it's even, we'll get into it here, but I also think it's cool that her brothers were trying to become warders, or at least showed interest at some point to become warders. So I like how their family is not only just powerful in terms of being, you know, princes and princesses, but also being capable in combat.
And small correction, she's not a former Aes Sedai. She just was in the tower doing training because remember Elayne says later, I want to be the first Aes Sedai queen, implying that her mom wasn't. But her mom also says in this scene we're about to talk through, when she visits Elaine's room, she says, oh, this is smaller than the rooms I remember. So like it's like a tradition to send the leader or future leaders of Andor to go through the novice training. You're not necessarily a sister though.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, she mentions it in this scene. So we have Morgase and Elayne are finally reuniting over after how long, and Morgase, when she's telling Elayne, okay, this is what's going to happen, she says you'll go through the arches, become an accepted, receive your honorary Aes Sedai ring, and then dip. Like we have to consolidate our power back in Camelin, basically, which is the capital of Andor. That's this kind of central city of the country. So that's Morgase's understanding of what's happening. Obviously, we know Elayne does not want to leave. And Elayne is here in the scene. Morgase comments on it. She is showing more loyalty to the tower in this moment. She's not saying anything about what the tower is obviously hiding. You know, we have Elida in the first scene, and she's looking. She sees the cracks in the columns. Morgase knows something's up, but Elaine's not telling her. And then to move into kind of this next two scenes that we'll group into one is just Morgase and Elida have a very, I was going to say concealed conversation by themselves, while at the same time Varen and Siuan are also kind of scheming. So we're finding out here that Elida knows they're hiding something big and she wants to find out. And then we have the opposite where Varen's like, Elida is here, like she's snooping around. You know, they're a little worried. So I thought these two scenes worked well together.
Let's just talk about the big info dump here about Elida used to be the competition for the Amelin seat with Siuan. So potentially second strongest Aes Sedai we've ever seen right here is where my mind kind of went. So I did not expect that. She like I said, she has this like scary aura to her, but now I know she can certainly back it up, and she has more of a voice in the tower than Siuan would probably know about, I guess, is what I was gathering from Siuan at least saying, do not underestimate how much power she still has in the tower, even though she's been moved to Andor and doesn't really spend any time at the tower, it seems like.
And like just the setup of the political factions within the tower is always stuff that I latch onto. So I like this. They just showed the sides real quick. They showed their thought process. Varen's giving advice to Siuan saying, we got to watch out about all this. That's all good stuff. But this leads directly into what I'll call the good side, like the Siuan side or our side. I don't even know if you can say good. Siuan side going into the next room with her confidants here. And then they bring in Min, which thank God, like I feel like I miss Min as a character. So I'm happy that she's back. I don't know how you feel about her in the show, Dave, but I just have so many thoughts on Min. So I like when she shows up because her talent is just single-handedly one of the most important and cool things about the entire story that lets the writers be cryptic and just feed us cool future information. Because if you, just a reminder, she sees pictures around people that are important that are giving glimpses into the future. And what she says in this is that she still sees dead Aes Sedai, and that confirms that a battle is yet to come at some point, where I think she even gives a number of how many dead Aes Sedai there are. But 9. I like how serious like Siuan instantly takes this. She knows that this is real. So the fact that she's getting all this new information, you could see her thinking, and it's just a good scene to really set the politics up for the future of the White Tower.
So I definitely appreciate Min's power and how she is definitely a key plot device for the story. I'm siding with Matt here that she left our boys out to dry, and I'm not too keen on that. So, but there's still room for her to grow on me a little bit, but still on team Matt. Fuck her for now.
Yeah.
But it was good to hear the apology at least.
There is something that I just don't rock with about the outfit. I know it's like servant. Why is she wearing a blazer and trousers? I know they like are trying to like, she wears trousers in the books a lot. She is a tomboy. People always try to get her to dress more like a girl, a woman, and she doesn't want to because that's not her. She stands out so much. It looks so modern with the blazer. If I have a critique, it just throws me off slightly, but we're going to get a lot more Min, and I'm not complaining about that. Okay. Before we leave, I just want to mention I love Morgase and Elida's part of this conversation in these scenes of Morgase is smart enough to know that the fact that they told her that Elayne was kidnapped means it's way worse than that. Like they admitted that there's got to be more behind it. You know, I just like that level of politicking and the way she's thinking. We're going to move into, this ends up being a lot less serious of a scene, not a ton of politicking going on, a lot of peacocking, let's say. So we have the Andoran princes having a bit of a practice match, and they very rudely take away Matt from having fun with this novice named Clara. This was just a great 2 scenes right here. Just kind of classic Matt and giving us some good characterization about the princes as well.
Mhm. I love Matt, of course, showing off the horn to Clara. That was great. And he's so funny. His thunder definitely gets stolen. And I thought that the brothers put on a good performance. I kind of doubted them earlier when they were saying, "Oh, we were trying to become warders," and I wasn't sure if that was, just arrogant prince talking, thinking of, "Oh, I'm the best. I can surely do this." But there was some definitely backbone to those words, and it was a really well choreographed fight too, especially how they used the environment to do some really cool flips, and it was awesome. Oh, and I
This
definitely
was
liked how going back to the horn, I liked how Min asked for Matt to bring the horn with him. And he's like, "Oh, did you hear I blew this?" And she's just like, "You fucker." Like, of course I know that.
this was the biggest dick tease of a scene I've ever seen in my entire life. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. I literally told Dave, I said, I gotta focus. This could be iconic. And it just they're such a dick tease. It might come back to play. You'll know what I mean when we talk about it in the future. But the thing I liked is that even Nynaeve was like kind of given into the whole, I think everybody's into this kind of thing, but you saw Gawain being all cocky and flirting with the girls mid-fight. So that's just a new important characteristic, I guess, that you get to see about him. It pays off a little bit later, even this episode, but overall just Matt bumbling around and being an idiot. It's all going to come together, but they knew what they were doing when they gave this to the book readers, just like this part.
Yes. They're laying breadcrumbs. They released a clip of this, we'll call it like a week ago, somewhat recently, before the season actually aired and premiered, and people were just like foaming at the mouth, like, you bastards. Like, how could you do this to us? All right. The next scene I have here, again, always they end up being groups of scenes, is this hunting the Black Ajah. So this honestly comes right off the back of that practice sparring scene. Nynaeve and Elayne are summoned to Siuan. Siuan ends up giving them this mission, which is you have to hunt down the Black Ajah. They talk to Siuan a little bit. They talk by themselves a little bit as well.
This was so hype. I mean, I know at the end of last episode, I said Rand's storyline is obviously the one that I'm most looking forward to, and I wasn't too interested in the tower events, but this definitely spiked my interest for sure. I mean, I love Elayne. Nynaeve, I'm ready for her to keep growing on me. And this is just a perfect opportunity for them to just be badasses and provide some really great support for the tower. So I was super hyped to hear this news that they were going to become the hounds of Siuan. It was awesome. So this storyline definitely got a lot more interesting for me. I'm glad that these two, and it's not that Siuan is just throwing these novices into this. One knows that they have experience, especially with them fighting the Forsaken in the last season, and two, they have dormant power and they will get overlooked because they are servants. So this was what I needed for this storyline to get really interesting.
And this is really what Elayne needs for later in the episode to have some backbone and stand up to her mom to say I'm staying. So this was like a very needed mission that's put forth. But if you caught it right in the beginning of them walking in here, you get one small second of Siuan locking a treasure chest box that might be something later, but she's using the power. It's like clearly like something important. We don't have to talk about that, but yeah, this was good. Like this is something I've been waiting for, and I think they stuck the landing of like setting their path forward.
We do as well get a little bit of for all the power scalers out there. They confirm here that Liandrin is kind of the strongest in that group, and Siuan, she's buttering them up, let's say, a little bit. We also know how powerful Nynaeve and Elayne are. So she's saying, you guys have this double whammy. You're checking all the boxes that we need, and that I know 100% I can trust you. And you guys are a match in the one power for Liandrin. You're literally the only 2 people possible for this job. And then we do have just this one thing where I enjoyed, and Dave, I'm not sure if you feel like it was out of character or it aligns and what it may be, with Nynaeve, like, really believes in this mission. She is glad to have this mission. She wants to succeed. Like, she is like gung-ho. She's in it. And it's just nice.
I think
Yeah.
she was looking for this mission, and I needed her to have a mission like this from her because she has been pretty annoying, at least to me, for the past couple seasons. She's been a problem, and this is where the turnaround starts. I can feel it.
I'm a self-proclaimed biggest hater of Nynaeve from the book of all time. After season 1, I already preferred the show Nynaeve. So I'm not coming into the show like wanting to hate her. I think she's already better, like I said. But the block of that she has on her powers is always a frustrating thing as an audience to watch. But at least she's leaning on Elayne and saying, like, I can't channel, but I need you to be there. Like, I trust you. So they have a good dynamic, and I think it came across well.
And I will say, speaking to their dynamic, they did it, I think, well in season 2 after Egwene is captured by the Seanchan, and it's just the two of them, and they have to figure things out. And they have this kind of a little bit argumentative edge to them, where Nynaeve is used to being in charge. Elayne is the daughter heir of arguably the strongest country on the continent. So like they both have this desire to kind of lead. They don't really back down from each other, and they're joking with each other in the sparring scene as well. And then they're kind of not necessarily at each other's throats, because that's aggressive, but they argue in this scene too. And Nynaeve's like very disappointed in her, in that she thinks she's going to leave. So they're characterizing that relationship very well. It's very almost like sisterly too, in a way. It just kind of works.
Yep.
All right. This is, I guess, technically the second to last scene, but this is a big Elayne moment here. So she has 2 conversations. I loved both conversations. If you make me choose, I won't choose. But she has one conversation with Gabriel, and then she has another conversation with Morgase. The Gabriel one's more kind of colloquial. It's more like friendly, like Dave, you were saying, supportive, while the Morgase one, let's say, is probably a little bit more serious and, let's say, future defining.
If I have to pick, it's easily the Morgase conversation.
Sure.
I mean, the way she's flexing her muscles, like, I have fought or forsaken. I helped kill Ishmael in season 2. That was hype. I mean, her stepping up to her mother, I thought that was amazing. And then going back to the Gabriel dark friend forsaken bit, he's supporting her to stay. And we know Moraine doesn't want, at least the 2 Rivers 5 to stay because of the Black Ajah and the ties that there could be around. And, here we have Gabriel trying to convince Elayne to stay, maybe, for some Black Ajah reasons. So dark friend still, but I think the Morgase one was way better, just because Elayne gets to put her foot down and really show her mom that she's like a woman now, that she's powerful, she can make her own decisions, and not only just think of Andor, but of herself as well, which is the most important.
Yeah, if you didn't say it, I was going to say it, because I'll choose too. The Morgase scene is the best. Like, it was MVP worthy for Elayne as a character. And I was saying this earlier when I was describing Swan's first scene. I think this episode, I used the word characterization. I think this episode did amazing for 3 big characters in that field, being Swan, Elayne, and Matt. And we'll save the Matt conversation for a little bit later. But I really think, like, Elayne as a character got so solidified this episode. You see how politically savvy she's been, but like, it comes across even more when she's talking to the queen of her country, right? So it comes across here. She's genuine. She has these ideas. She knows exactly what she wants. She wants to be the first Aes Sedai queen so that she could lead the nation against the darkness. She even says, I freaking fought the Forsaken. Like, I revived the Dragon Reborn. All these things. It was just so badass at the delivery and the confidence she was getting here talking to her mom. It was amazing. But I will give a little shout out to the Gabriel scene too, where we get this seemingly throwaway line if you know nothing about the books, but it is incredibly important that Gabriel goes on to say that the people under Morgase, like their countrymen, are starting to have some unrest, and she's having some problems at home. And he even says that she dismissed the long-term standing Captain General Brine, I think is how the pronunciation is. That character will come back, but it's an interesting choice that the show made, where at this point in the story, you have already met him a little bit and you got to see that dismissal of Brian. But I understand why they did it. But just know, if you're a show only watcher, just keep that name in the back of your head, because I'm sure he'll come back. But this was very good politics. And I don't know, I'm pretty indifferent about Gabriel. I feel like he's the actor's coming across as pretty charismatic. He clearly has a history where he says that he would be drinking with Elayne back in the day, and they just view him as like the fun stepdad, I guess is what he would kind of be, because he's the prince consort. So we'll get more out of all these characters. But yeah, like I love how Morgase accepted Elaine's, path, and she even says, I need to forge my own path and earn that throne. It all came together so well. And spoiler alert, if I get to go first, Elaine's my MVP.
I think she might have been.
It sounds like you're penciled
too.
in. It sounds like you're penciled in.
So I guess maybe to explain myself slightly, because you both obviously just disagree with me, I think the Gabriel conversation, I loved the friendliness of it and like the fun combined with the information that we get out of it. We're getting this honest truth about the situation back in Andor. And I just wrote down this note that it's like Gabriel seems to genuinely just like miss Elayne as a friend. Like I just like that they kind of have that relationship, and charismatic is literally the word. It's also funny that he's kind of anti-Galad. He's like, oh my God, like I can't believe you left me alone with these guys. Like I just pretty much need my buddy back, essentially, which I think was awesome. And in the Morgase one, yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's obviously very badass. We learn a lot too in this scene from Morgase. So we're just getting a little bit of context of why Morgase is so protective over Elayne. Especially, we know that Elayne is the heir because a woman has to ascend to the Lion Throne. And we get some context about how Morgase ended up ascending to the Lion Throne. We know earlier in the episode it was because of a civil war, but why was there a civil war? Well, they tell us here that the last daughter heir of the daughter heir of the queen before Morgase just disappeared without a trace. Her name was Princess Tigraine. She was the heir that died and started that third succession war, with Morgase ends up winning. Naturally, Morgase is paranoid about her own heir disappearing. She's already been kidnapped. So like that paranoia that's there, I would say, is genuinely earned. And they do tell us here as well, just again, more lore and feathers in Morgase's cap, in that Morgase was at the tower and she left to go fight the Civil War. So she was pretty much the same age as Elayne is right now. So imagine Elayne just leaving and going to fight a civil war for Andor and winning. Like that's Morgase.
That was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some good blood, let's say, in the Trakan family. We got some big bodies there. And I guess the final thing I'll say, I'm sorry to step over you, but just to address what Luke had said too, where in the books, we had already met these characters. So book 1, we remember season 1 where it's Matt and Rand are kind of on their own after Shadar Logoth, and they're kind of wandering around. So in the books, they end up in Camelin, and Rand, because the wheel weaves as the wheel wills, ends up somehow in the palace, and he meets Elayne, he meets Galad, he meets Gawain. So like we're aware of all of these characters, but they're there for like a chapter and then dip. So I agree with Luke. It just makes more sense to insert them at this point in the story.
Just reminds me, Luke, who was the Queen of Sintra? It was also the Lion. Wasn't it like Lion's Queen of Sintra? Yes. Witcher.
Yeah. It starts. It's
Calanthe.
Calanthe.
Yes, Calanthe. Yeah, it's very identical. But Kyle, the non-Witcher, the non-Witcher expert here. That's crazy. But very, very similar parallels to that storyline. Of course, Hero's Journey.
And I'm just going to shout out the Elayne quote being, I will go through the arches, I will root out the shadow in this tower, and I will become the first Aes Sedai queen. That's our girl.
Better conversation right there.
Yeah, that's our girl. Okay, so I guess we should do Matt before. Do you want to do Matt before we do this, like,
let's just do the
scene where they leave?
I don't think so.
Yeah, that makes more sense. More just to tell us where we're at. So we're leaving episode 2 at the tower with Morgase is leaving, but Elayne, Gawain, Galad, and Elaida are all staying. Siuan's really happy about one of those. She's probably indifferent to 2 of those, and she wants to jump off the tower for that last one, that Elaida is staying. And then Morgase and Siuan have this great standoff too at the end. I would say this wasn't public posturing. This was real. I think that they both felt what they're saying.
That's exactly what I was going to ask, because me and Dave were having this conversation, and I was going to say on the podcast, I'm going to ask Kyle's interpretation, because I didn't know how much of it was the public persona versus it being legit. It could have been a little bit of both, but it definitely feels like after the second watch through that, it's part of it was just raw emotion to, I'll be back with my army if my daughter's hurt. So makes it even cooler because we know how much they actually respect each other behind the scenes too. So I liked it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think too, like the actual steps of if Elayne like disappears and was killed, then like Morgase doesn't have an heir, so she goes, "Fuck it, let me go fight a war with the Aes Sedai," and then like totally destroy her house, essentially, which maybe isn't the smartest step, but the threat is a threat that carries some weight, nonetheless.
Mhm.
All right, so we're just gonna quick hit some Matt stuff. The first one is really the healing session. Only bring this up to mention the Aes Sedai healers, the Yellow Ajah, are saying it can't really be done. There's no way to heal him. Brain injuries, especially, are quite difficult for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's okay if no one has any comment. Dave, do you recognize
comment.
who this Aes Sedai was?
I did not know off
So
the top of my head.
This is Ryuma Sedai. She's the yellow sister that saves or hides away Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elayne in Falm. Her warder dies. She pulls out the hourglass and breaks the demonic and the soul.
Half.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
That's
okay.
her. So she ends up surviving.
I like her.
So we talked a lot of shit on her warder for not killing her when she was about to get captured, but it turns out he made the right decision because she ends up living and is actually able to have a life.
Yeah, but she didn't do shit.
I mean, fair, but she's still alive, and I'm sure
Yeah,
she's still helping people in the clinics that they have.
Were you guys
shout out
saying
to the warder?
Were you guys saying that the healer that became Black Ajah was the best one in the last episode?
Yes, Chesmal Emery is like one of the most well-known healers. She is that shorter Asian woman in the Yellow Ajah.
She was
from episode
yellow,
1.
and now okay.
Yes,
got it.
I just really like that name, Chesmal Emery. I think it just rolls off
Mhm.
the tongue. Okay,
Sounds
last scene for Matt, last scene for the Tar Valon setting bucket is Matt and Min have this reunion, which we've actually already talked about, and then they do have this reunion only so that Matt can go to Siuan. I loved the Matt and Siuan conversation. I think I have a lot to say about it, but I'll take a back seat for now.
Mm-hmm.
Luke, I'll let you speak on this one because I feel like I've just been stepping in after every pause for
No,
Kyle.
it makes sense to get your raw reactions, but I will jump in for this one specifically first because I loved this scene. I thought it was so freaking good. It might be my favorite scene of the episode, or maybe not, but it was at least a top 2 conversation because I love the Elayne stuff too. But the way that Siuan just plays off of Matt's, I don't know, his cockiness and just the way he is and he's been presented through these first 2 episodes of this season, it was perfect. It was like the dirtiest read of all time. And she just jokingly like gassed him up to just crush him. He's like, you wouldn't be stupid enough to just, walk around the town and use it for social capital or like get your portrait painted, right? And then she ends it with something that's super important. She says, do you want me to hold on to that horn? Because she kind of clarifies here, if somebody finds him with the horn, they could just kill him and take it and become the new horn. What is it? The horn blower, whatever.
Yeah.
It was just so good. But skipping ahead to the end of the conversation, this is the third example of the perfect characterization, I think, that comes into this episode where the last question that Siuan asked him is to Matt, like, all heroes is just, they just do what has to be done. And she says, like, will you do what has to be done? And Matt's response is, I'm no hero. And that may seem like a little comment, but that is the definition of his character for so long until we start hitting a fork in the road where you don't know what's going through Matt's head. You don't know how he sees himself, but this is the best way it can be summarized is he doesn't think he's a hero. He doesn't think that he's grand at anything. And it's just happens to be right place, right time in certain moments. And it'll come back. Just I'm no hero is just a perfect way to think about Matt as is right now until growth happens or until he goes down a dark path. Whatever happens, like this is where he is. And I think this is pretty much how what we're up to book 3. Like that's how he views himself. And I thought it was really good. And Siuan crushed.
Yeah, I'm just to play off that. I absolutely agree that Siuan crushed it here. I like how she's just not afraid to tell it like it is. She does kind of the same with Elayne and Nynaeve earlier. And Matt here, like you said, chastising him, but also knowing exactly what to say to kind of motivate who she's speaking to. While, yes, she does criticize him harshly at the beginning, I took the second half as not her spiting him, but more so just trying to get him to realize that he is important. He is a hero.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just great to see that encouragement from her, because I feel like, especially for Matt, because Matt has been just so looked down on for basically 2 seasons straight. He was the guy that was a fuck up. He was never taken too seriously, especially by the Eyes to Die. And
Infected by the dagger for a bunch of the episodes too.
yeah, and so his character, while I don't think in the moment he took those words to heart that Swan told him about being a hero, I think later on they will ring in his head and he will get that motivation. But Swan is just a great person to talk to. I think she just tells it like it is, but also at the same time knowing how to keep that person, excited or happy.
This is a conversation pretty much ripped entirely from the book, at least the second half of it. I remember the first time I read being so struck by, or at the very least, it being such a memorable conversation when she talks about her uncle, the gambler, the slippery guy you could never really nail down, aka Matt, and just a guy who died pulling children from a burning house because he literally wouldn't stop until the house fell down on top of him. And the quote of, "Are you like him, Matt? Will you be there when the flames are high?" is just pulled right from the books. It's so good. I got chills because this is such a pivotal scene in the books, like Luke mentioned, because it's such a pivotal scene for his character. And my other comment, because I think you guys touched on everything perfectly, is I'm more, maybe it turns into a question to Luke, are you shocked at all that Gawain and Galad are like laying pipe?
So yeah, I mean, I don't know how much we really want to talk about it because I feel like you stopped yourself from giving away something earlier that I don't think is a bad spoiler. But Galad is different than what I had in my head, and I think this plays into that very well. Of like, yeah, like I guess they're also supposed to be pure, probably too, or like not going
Yeah,
around just banging. I don't know if that's what you're getting at, but I'm more about the Galad shift in personality of what I thought.
Yeah, I think that Galad as a character is very, it's so hard to describe it in like a word or an adjective to me right now, but he's just by the book. Like it's everything is about kind of like honor and doing things the right way, and he's very formal. You can tell it the way like he dresses and stands, his back's always straight, his arms are behind him and stuff, and it felt slightly out of character for him to just be like plowing
Yeah, no,
broads
totally.
in the White Tower. I think sometimes where this show can go wrong a little bit is trying to fish so much for like comedy beats, using maybe characters in ways that isn't totally necessary. It's genuinely funny that this is happening to Matt.
Oh yeah.
But it felt to me like, damn, like I kind of wish it wasn't at least Galati. I don't even, because it doesn't even feel like Gawain's really like that either. I think Gawain is more someone who's like likes the attention, but like would he go so far as to be banging broads? Maybe I'm forgetting something from the books, but it just felt slightly out of character of these two.
Agreed.
But also it does fit if they're trying to get this way. Obviously, Dave, you're not familiar with the book counterparts, so it's probably not out of the realm of possibility that we have some princes that are very confident in themselves or just going around banging broads. I mean, that's not a crazy thing for them to be doing. All right. That wraps up Tarvalon. So we're going to move into our third and final, which I have as Journey to the Waste. So somewhat similar to the beginning of Perrin's bucket and storyline. We're just getting some scenic traveling shots. They're journeying on the spine of the world, they say, which is this mountain range that essentially separates the wetlands, let's say, from the Aiel Waste. And before we can actually get to the waste, we camp. We have some training. So we have Rand and Lan doing some things, and we have Moraine, Egwene, and kind of Avienda having a conversation as well.
So Avienda is obviously very annoyed that Rand is training with a sword. It seems like she is more on the side that he should just be channeling. There's no point to him having a sword. I think is what it was. Or was it that he should have one of the spear? Okay, that's what it was. Okay, that makes sense. And then my other comment was the next part with Moraine and Egwene being Egwene's bruises. So Moraine says to Egwene that she thought she healed those bruises back in Tarvalon, I guess, but they've reappeared. And Egwene doesn't really give her an answer, but what I'm taking it as is either two things: is that the dreams are manifesting themselves into reality, where she wakes up in the morning with bruises on her neck because Rena is choking her in her dreams, or it's Egwene basically clawing at her own neck to get Rena in her dreams off of her. I don't know how much Lanfear has involvement in all this. We can get to that when we get into that scene. But the Egwene bruises is definitely something I'm taking note of. I'm not sure if there was an actual reason that she has them that we are supposed to know about.
Yeah, I mean, you could take it either way. And me and Dave actually had a debate about the dream sequences, and I kind of want your take on that when we dive through that with the Lanfear stuff and the Rand stuff next. But that is a good read on it, I think, Dave. But again, we'll talk about that more in a second. We have to say, so we can get to the night where we can talk about the dreams, the Avienda piece of it, where she just lays out the Karo Khan's prophecy stuff, more about the Corinthian cycle, all that stuff. Is that how you pronounce it? Corinthian cycle? No.
So every time I think about it in my head too, I think about pronouncing it a separate way. But the Carathian cycle is the way I'm going to pronounce it in this moment. Is let's say the wetland prophecy. So that's from the Aiel have their own prophecy about the dragon, about the Karn essentially. So I wrote it down word for word because I'm enjoying how much of a role prophecy and the way they're making a point to really say the contents of prophecy in all these episodes and in this season. So she ends up saying, he shall spill out the blood of those that call themselves Aiel as water on sand, and break them as dried twigs. Yet a remnant of a remnant he shall save, and they shall live. And I just really like the way she characterizes it of the Karn is creation and destruction in one. That's balance. That's kind of always been maybe the ethos of the Wheel of Time. You know, the pattern always strives for balance. We've talked in a lot of it in season 1, but slightly season 2 about kind of the yin and the yang of Sidar and Sidene, which is the male and the female half of the one power. We talked a little bit too about the ancient Aes Sedai symbol, because it used to be men and women in the Aes Sedai, of like the yin and yang symbol of the black and the white. So there's just like some good connections there. I thought this was a great scene.
Yeah. Do you have any take on the prophecy there, Dave?
Besides that, obviously, that the Aiel prophecy talks about both the dragon causing destruction and creation, whereas the Wetlanders one says it's going to be one or the other. They're both different in that one says it's going to do both, the other says it's going to be one or the other. So I'm not sure how to take it at face value.
It's a lot for you at this point.
Of course, yeah.
It's so tough. But the piece that's left behind, to me, I just think of a child almost. You know, if there's one true Aiel or something like that, and they have to save that person to protect the tribe. I don't know, but yeah, very interesting.
Write that down.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that they're just doing a great job with the prophecy, man. I just love it. And I like how Avienda is saying it doesn't really matter if she cares. You know, it's just like it's her duty to make sure he does it. Even if she has an opinion over this creation and destruction of where it literally says, I'm going to break the Aiel, that's her people, she doesn't let it cloud her vision of what she has to do. Literally saying her whole point is to make sure that he does it. And that's just, I think, a great insight into the Aiel themselves as well. But also, that's a good parallel to Moraine almost as well. And that Moraine is willing to do whatever it takes to make sure the dragon does what the dragon needs to do.
It just, to me, also feels like war is also a great cataclysm that is a representation of both destruction and creation, in terms of a lot of people obviously die in war, but what comes after is, you have to rebuild. And does Rand lead the Aiel people into a war that, helps save them in some way, makes them more free, and the people that need to survive are those remnants that need to continue on? I'm not sure, but I definitely think a battle of some sort is at least where my mind goes when I think of creation and destruction.
Pretty good.
And I will say that they don't say it here necessarily, but this is a piece. So as we've gotten episode 1, we got a piece. We got multiple pieces of the larger prophecy. We talked about the check boxes of what the Corethian cycle is. This is a piece of the Aiel prophecy. So there is more than just this part. There's some other aspects of it, which I assume we're going to get throughout the season in parallel to the parts that we're getting of the Corethian cycle from the Wetlanders.
I'm fairly confident you said it 2 different ways this episode already, but
100%.
I mean, clearly 100%. I will take us into the next episode for no reason, but or to
next
the next
episode,
scene.
we're moving to episode 2.
Scene. Sorry. Next scene.
Kyle's doing a bad hosting job. He can't say the word Corinthian at all, so he's done.
No, I really want. Anytime it's a Lanfear scene, it's me. So this next scene is a parallel scene going on that is going to directly lead into what you were asking about earlier, Dave, where we kind of have Rand waking up, and we'll call it the dream world just for simplicity purposes right now. Rand waking up to Lanfear, and at the same time laying next to Egwene in the real world, but then we see Egwene going through her motions of the PTSD that we've always been talking about with the Sean Chen and her time in essentially slavery, where there's an interesting question here about like, is just this scene happening because Lanfear is over there talking with Rand at the same time, and you actually see the superposition of her appearing as Rena, and then it fades into Rena. So is Lanfear, who the words that she's saying to Rand is basically poking at Egwene, saying she'll never know you like I do or love you for the darkness that you have. Like, this is a pretty important scene just to characterize again, like Lanfear and Lews Therin's relationship, where first of all, man, the chemistry and the sexual tension that's going on here is incredible between these two actors. I love every second of it. But Lanfear's main concern is protecting Rand, and having him going into the Aiel Waste is going against the wishes of going to get Kalendor. That's what she wants. But then she's also paralleling that with saying, kind of luring him back to her, saying like, you don't even care about Egwene. She's nothing. So while that's happening, you're flashing over to Egwene, and it looks like it's Lanfear that's directly causing this torture to her. Does that mean that it's been her this entire time? I don't know. Or is it just happening now because that's how they're showing us cinematography wise? Like, I don't really know how to take it right there. But after the second watch, I'm starting to think that maybe this torture is a mixture of PTSD and Lanfear trying to cut her off from Rand. I don't know. So I guess I kind of want both your takes on that. So what do you think?
I can jump in and say that I think it's prudent to be wary of anything happening that aligns with Lanfear's goal. The chances are that she's involved in it feels pretty high. You know, and we learned season 2 as well. She is kind of a master of the dream world. That is a big part of her role, like her skill set. Yeah. So it feels quite coincidental that Egwene is struggling in her dreams. That scene as well, like you mentioned, that Lanfear kind of turns into Rena. So yeah, they're just doing a great freaking job with the dream stuff.
Yes, they are. Yes,
it's an insanely important part of the books, and they're maybe missing one aspect of it that I won't talk about until like it's confirmed that it's not happening, because I think it will happen, but they just feel real and visceral and like nightmares, and like we've said, this part where it's actually following Egwene into her actual like waking life is just awesome. It's just, they're just nailing that.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you think, Dave?
I think it's Lanfear. Even before you made a great case as well, but even before that, I was on the side of, as of right now, I'll just think of it that it is Lanfear causing it. And it's a little bit of that jealousy, wanting to kind of kick Egwene out and try and separate them. But we don't know too much more. We're throwing darts here.
I mean, that aligns pretty well with your season 2 prediction that Lanfear and Egwene are going to fight. So
very true.
Egwene's going to get sick of it. I could see that. And it's good.
I'm kind of transitioning us further into the Lanfear stuff, and a reason why I think it's also Lanfear, well, at the time I thought it was Lanfear, definitely, was because Egwene, after she's dealing with Rena in her nightmares, she wakes up in a desert, which I immediately was like, oh, it's the same place where Lanfear took Rand when she first got revealed to be Lanfear, and they're about to have a one-on-one conversation now that she just had her conversation with Rand. But it wasn't the case. It's actually a vision, and it's of this elderly Aiel woman who says, "You do not belong here." I was shocked that it wasn't Lanfear. I think this was completely separate vision. I think Lanfear did her stuff to fuck up Egwene and have her think of Rena, but then as soon as she ended her conversations with Rand, she left the dream realm entirely, and that's why this chance for a vision was able to happen with Egwene. Now, the meaning of "you do not belong here" is still kind of a question to me. I could take the easy route and just be like, oh, it's because she's not Aiel that they're just going to kick her out. Kind of like my mind's kind of going towards Dune a little bit with that. But it also could maybe be that she's an Aes Sedai, and maybe the Aes Sedai aren't too keenly looked on by the Aiel, but also then we're talking Moraine. So it's got to be something unique to Egwene that the others don't have. So, but
Okay.
those were where my guesses kind of went, just very generic with all I saw there.
No, I think your head's totally in the right place. I think you're thinking the right directions. You're making the connections, at least that it's smart to make and to think about. Are they correct? Only time will tell. As we know, the wheel weaves as the wheel wills. But I guess maybe to move us from serious talk into funny-ish talk, imagine being Egwene. So you almost died. You were a slave. It's really impacting your relationship with your hometown boyfriend. You're kind of having some intimacy struggles with him. You're trying to overcome it. You're going on this journey with him to help protect him. And then completely unbeknownst to you, one of the most beautiful women and most powerful channelers, who also happens to be super evil, is in love with your boyfriend's soul and is visiting him in his dreams and kind of trying to kiss him while simultaneously sending you the worst nightmares ever and almost killing you. It's just like, that is an uphill battle if I've ever heard.
Egwene hasn't caught a break yet. She has.
Man,
really
Lanfear is such a character, dude. What a great character.
And she's like trying to kiss Fran, and he's like, no. And she's like, oh, it's because of Egwene. Like, you'll get over that. And then he kind of almost gives in at the end, and then she pulls away and is like, no, you can't. I was like, oh my.
The sexual tension is palpable.
It's the best. It's the best. But back to the seriousness for a second. Like, once they all wake up, Rand, what? Yeah, Rand and Egwene have a quick conversation about the nightmares, and I just love this line from Egwene because it's so on brand for her, where she tells Rand, I was having nightmares about Rena, and then she says, and Rand's like, well, don't be afraid or whatever, or like whatever he says. Her response is, well, if Rena was here right now, I'd kill her again. Like, I wish he was. It's so cool how much she's dealing with the PTSD by also trying to stand up to it as best as she can and like push it back down, because I like that she's so vengeful over her time with the Sean Chen, and that's going to keep coming back to her. Like, she's going to keep dealing with these PTSD. It's just a core part of her character, and I am impressed at how the show is handling it right now.
All right. Speaking about core parts of characters and impressed with how the show is handling it, I think we really need to talk about this very quick but impactful Moraine and Rand scene. So Moraine is kind of confronting him, like, why are you training so hard with Elayne and the sword? I love his answer of like, because he listens to me. Because we saw in that earlier scene where Elayne actually asks him like, hey bro, are you okay? Like, do you want to talk about it? Which seems slightly out of character, but I'm going to roll with it because
the emotional availability. The
emotional availability and intelligence, baby. He's that guy. He's got it all. He's literally the full package. And man, this conversation about channeling is fantastic.
Is this not like the best piece of writing to summarize channeling for the male side you've like ever heard? Like, I cannot believe how good this was written, how well this was written. I should say, I can't say good, but
looking back too, we had this conversation maybe in season 1 of trying to explain to you, Dave and Paul, of like what channeling is like, and we're using these terms like, like almost like heroin. It's an ecstasy, like tripping so hard on mushrooms, and the way they did it here was just so good, man. There's that sweetness that he just can't get, it cannot satisfy. He just wants to keep tasting it, and he's getting the taint of it, which feels crazy to say, but and it's just like in his stomach, and he's nauseous, but he doesn't care because the sweetness is so good. It's just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Such good writing, man. I loved that line. I think it did such a good job of because we as the like we're watching a show, so you don't get to see their thoughts, but that line summarizes all of Rand's thoughts of dealing with the power and trying to get used to the feelings of it through the first 2.5 books. So my like just claps all around. Like I was so happy that line was there, and the delivery by Rand was so good. The whole thing was really good, and he was even trying to play off Moraine, saying like, "You don't understand," and she says, "I do understand." He's like, "No, you freaking don't. Like you get to use this heroin all the time and just love life and be happy. I have to be sick every time I touch it, but I need it. My body craves it. My soul wants to just use the ability." I just was so impressed with this line. I loved watching it through twice, and I will watch it through a third time later.
Yeah, I mean, this was a great moment for Ren in terms of just giving just more depth to his character. I absolutely love the visualization of the weaves here and how much control he has over it still, while also portraying this almost slightly mad character who's, you can see the greed on his face. I thought Rand's actor absolutely crushed it here for sure. This sent chills down my spine. Just Rand is, a few moments away potentially from just becoming full blown, Dark One. So he's a delicate guy, and he has to manage the channeling to some degrees. And I just love that he countered Moraine saying that he doesn't fear it. And because that's what we've been led to believe almost for ever since he found out that he's been using it. We've seen him avoid training with the one power, and we've always assumed because it was afraid. But here he admits that it's just because it's pure adrenaline, pure addiction, that he can't get enough, even though he knows he shouldn't.
Now, Dave, do you think it's worth the trade-off? Would you accept this power?
You know me. I love power. I love strong people. I'm accepting it.
You know me. I love power.
I love power.
But wait,
I'm always drawn to the strongest characters in TV shows, anime. I would take
you. You would probably be a Forsaken. The Dark One would approach you and be like, "Dude, I got all of this power over here," and you'd be
I
like,
would say
"Yeah,
yes.
you know what?
I would
Fuck it."
definitely say yes. I could not say no.
That's so.
But we can't walk away from this scene without just commenting on how stupid Moraine's hat was just throughout this whole episode. I hated it. And I feel like
Her
the
best
internet's
Luffy impression.
yeah, the internet's gonna have a good laugh because that's similar to your thoughts on what you thought about Min's outfit. I just felt that hat was not high fantasy.
It wasn't it.
Nah,
It's
it
just
wasn't
like a
really it.
normal modern sun hat. It was just so
Yeah,
weird.
it was weird. Yeah.
I feel like it needed a bigger brim.
And what is she? She's blocking her skin from the sun. She has the one power. She should just be able to pull a shield over herself anyway. I don't get it. Yeah.
That's a good question. Well, I guess you can't heal yourself, so you could like heal yourself from like sunburn or sun poisoning. So maybe she does have to. But can you put up like a protective layer above yourself? But maybe she wants to get a little tan in, so she's kind of trying to play that balance.
The hat was that Luke said it, and then I couldn't stop noticing it.
Yeah. I was like, what is this bullshit?
I can see that being some split opinions out there. I'm sure some people out there love the hat. So if
Moraine's
you do,
fashion,
just like me, just like me with the jealousy of Elayne and Avienda, good for you if you like the hat. All right, so we have one final scene here, which I think does a great job of connecting every prior scene within this storyline. So we have the woman who was in Egwene's dream, or was she in this woman's dream? Were they in a vision together? What was going on? She just rocks up with a bunch of other Aiel people and literally just walks up and just starts spouting prophecy, which is like, okay, hell yeah, like you're welcome at my fire anytime. You can have some of my water as well and shade. So he will come from the west beyond the spine of the world. Check. Of the blood, but not raised by the blood. Check. He will tie us together with bond we cannot break. Question mark. He will take us back home and he will destroy us. Question mark. Chills. I'm on the floor crying. Episode
rock
ends.
hard.
Also, that all of my
up.
bodily functions are a roller coaster. Things are just going haywire.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally had chills at the end of this scene. The episode ended, and it was like, so we were able to get some screeners and record, so we can record ahead of time. So this was Tuesday night. I watched this. It was like 1:00 in the morning, and I was like, episode 3, click. Like I don't like,
No, that's
immediately
great.
episode 3. Just give me that immediately, and it was the best decision I've ever made because episode 3 is fucking fantastic as well.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, is it Avienda's the one that's saying who did you tell?
Yes.
We don't know, right? We're supposed to kind of piece that out. Who is the rat that told someone that they were coming to the waste? Is that what's
No,
happening? Like someone was
no.
tailing them?
I
It's
feel
difficult to know, but
I took it as one of the 4
There's
of them told someone else, hey, we're going to the Aiel waste. You maybe not follow us, but that person is now following them. And then Avienda is now realizing it as they're at the entrance saying, who did you tell? Is how I took it.
this is difficult. I'm just saying that obviously there's a reason why this is the woman that Egwene saw. Like that's not a
Yes.
coincidence, let's say.
Definitely 100%.
And
But
I mean, whatever. But Avienda noticing was a cool moment too, because the Aiel are more perceptive. They're in home. This is home territory, right? Like so her catching that right away was cool. But yeah, like I don't know. We can revisit
only-
that later if we want.
I mean, yeah, the only thing that I can think of is Lanfear is the only other person besides the Emmons Field 5 that knows where they're going. So I don't know
That's
if Lanfear
valid.
somehow
We'll stick
maybe
a
a
pin in it,
Forsaken.
I guess.
And we also do actually know that Mogideon was aware that they were all in Tarvalon, so could also be a Forsaken. I don't know, but
Yeah.
We'll drop it there. Decent episode. Wasn't gonna. Episode 1 was definitely still fresh in my head for sure, but easily a great follow up in terms of world building. We got a lot of new characters that I'm excited to see more of.
Yeah, I mean, just to almost
Speaking of new characters, though, just
I was
remember the guy
gonna
that
say this.
yeah, he like basically walks up to Rand and just kind of eyes him up and down and goes, "This is the guy." So we'll get his name next
Duncan,
episode.
Idaho.
Yeah, basically.
Absolute legend in the game. This
Mhm.
guy is an OG rider. I mean, we've met him. We'll learn more about him. Morgase, Elayne, Galad, Gawain, Gabriel. I mean, they were just throwing heavy hitters at us this episode. It was awesome.
We haven't talked about, or like the show hasn't talked about too much of like I feel like we did last season a little bit, but the Aiel culture, because obviously the only Aiel fighters that we've seen have been female. I think this is the first time we're seeing a male Aiel with the garments and so I'm
Technically,
I'm for sure interested to see.
Besides the one that they find hanging in season 1 from like
True,
Tom and Matt
right.
do. That was a
Yeah.
guy, I believe. Yeah.
Tom, shout out to Tom Maryland. Rumors that we're going to see him this season.
I'm definitely interested in finding out more about the Aiel's like cultural system and how they choose their fighters, and if they're all fighters or if there are some that are healer based, something like that. Can't wait.
Okay. We will get there. So before we actually wrap up this episode, we got to do our MVP, LVPs. We do this after every episode. Luke, sure, you're going to pull the Paul and jump to the head of the line by dropping your MVP in the middle of the episode. So we have no choice but to let you go first. So
I was caught between my 2 MVPs. So I felt that if I did that, there would be no choice. So I got to go first. But let's make the proclamation, Dave. Kyle will go first next episode, regardless if Paul joins us or not. Don't let that guy go first. He's going last. But anyway, MVP, I already spoiled it earlier. I think it's Elayne. My whole reasoning is just she crushed her whole episode. And I feel like I know her as a character pretty damn well after this scene and after this episode. It's just good things for Elayne here on out. So she's my MVP. And my LVP, I'm going to give to Min. And don't hear what I'm not saying when earlier I was saying that I was happy that Min's back. I am with you, Dave, that I do not think she apologized nearly enough to Matt for what she did. And I still hold a little bit of a grudge, but I like that Matt didn't actually forgive her there. So like there is going to be some little bit of resentment for what she did. She screwed them over hard, but also didn't have an easy time picking the LVP. So I don't feel that strongly about it, but that's what I'll do. I'll pick Min.
Go ahead, Dave.
Appreciate it. I just wanted to be on record that if Luke didn't take Elayne, I was going to take her, and that would have been back-to-back weeks of Elayne as the MVP. So I will go with Siuan. That's an easy one. I feel like we kind of gassed her up enough this episode with her conversations that she had with everyone. Give it to Siuan. LVP, I will give it to Elayne for just being the rat now in the biz of Siuan, who was the MVP. So it's only fair. It's fair that we have them butt heads here as well. So I'll give it to her.
All right. So my MVP, some good ones have been taken. I'm going to say Morgase. Her influence on this episode was just obvious in every single scene of the Tarvalon storyline. It felt like the cold open was awesome. Just the gravitas that she has on the screen was undeniable. And then LVP. LVP is a tough one now that I'm trying to think about it.
It was kind of hard to think of one. I have
Yeah.
one other backup just in case.
I'm going to say, I was going to say Gawain.
It's the other one I have.
But he does win the training bout, so I'll give it to Galad because he ends up losing in front of all of the ladies. And the fact that Gawain is able to pull off the backflip and the kiss to the crowd and win, that can't be an LVP performance. So we're going to give it to Galad.
Should have gave it to Moraine for that freaking hat, but
I was considering giving it to Moraine, but it would have been accusatory because it would have been all about something related to land fear. I can't remember, but I was close to giving it to Moraine too.
Okay, so that is gonna do it for our episode. I will say that Elayne has taken the early lead in the clubhouse. She has 2 MVPs so far. She's been 1,000 or 100, I guess either way kind of works. And we'll be back obviously for episode 3. You're probably aware that the episode's already out, as Amazon obviously drops their first 3 episodes of each season all at the same time. So we'll be back. Our coverage will be back for episode 3 as soon as possible. Just a reminder, the best way to support us if you're enjoying what you're hearing is going to be subscribing to the Binge Empire podcast feed. We'll be covering, obviously, every single episode of Wheel of Time this season. We'll move into some shows in the future, Whispers of What Foundation, Night of the Seven Kingdoms when that comes. So that's kind of the vibe we're trying to establish with this podcast. The best way to interact with us, beyond if you're watching on YouTube and commenting in that comment section, is going to be the Discord. The link will be in the episode description. I almost said the bio. I guess technically the bio works too, but that's just a place to have chats throughout the week, every day. It's been popping off for other shows we cover, like Severance, especially. We had to create a second mailbag feed for Severance because people love theorizing and such in the Discord. So if you're watching Severance, another reason for you to join the Discord and another reason to keep following other Bingetown TV podcasts. So this is our Binge Empire feed. The core is we cover everything Apple TV on that podcast, covering Severance right now, which is winding down. But like I said last episode, probably the most popular television show in the country, and our coverage has been killing it. We also have the Dark and Twisted podcast feed that right now that's going to be Yellow Jackets. We're also covering White Lotus on that. That's like, these kind of mystery, procedural, wacky type of shows. That's going to be on Dark and Twisted. And then Final Form is the next one, the final one that I'll advertise here. That's where we cover anime, animation shows. Currently, that's Solo Leveling and Invincible. Invincible, obviously, also on Amazon Prime. That's going to do it for us here at Binge Empire. Our coverage of Season 3, Episode 2 of Amazon Prime's The Wheel of Time. Once again, we are Binge Empire, and thank you so much for listening.